I'd like to think the 158 men and women who perished in Afghanistan are looking down and shaking their heads saying, look after my friends. Don't build me memorials. Look after my friends. They need it. Their souls are torn, their flesh is torn.
The training the Canadian Forces offers to its medics is unparalleled, I think, in Western armies or in armies, period, and extraordinarily brave. You know, Canadian got hit, the medic was coming. No matter what, the medic was coming.
It's very hard when you know that you could do everything right and somebody still dies. If I put that tourniquet on a little quicker, if we had put the IV in quicker, or got them breathing faster, would they have lived? And the hard realization is that people just die. And you could do everything right, and you're not going to save a life.
Do you remember everything up to the attack?
It's like a movie trailer. I've got snippets of memory. Yeah. We're in the village called Shinkai by a river for a council meeting with elders. We took our helmets off and lay our weapons down. This insurgent walked up behind me, took an axe from under his robe, and sank it into my head like he was chopping a log.
Sank it into your head.
Trying to get it out for a second bite, which would have killed me, when the man on my left fired his weapon and shot 2 rounds into the kid before he could strike again. The axe hit me on my left back, the back of the skull on the left.
How deep would it have gone into your brain?
3 inches.
Line 11 to the line 0. Say again the nature of the wound. Line 11, I say again, the nature of the wound is an axe. 1 to the head, over.
My brothers thought I was dead, my platoon brothers. The medic started bandaging me up. That's to save my life. And I was medevaced out by a Black Hawk, an American Black Hawk.
They talk about the golden hour. You know, from the time of first injury to the time reaching the OR, they want that an hour, and every minute outside that hour, the chances of survival drop.
My job was to stabilize people, treat the life-threatening injuries, make sure that they wouldn't deteriorate in the 15-minute helicopter ride back to the operating rooms at Kandahar Airfield. Just really the basics. Package them up, make sure they're still breathing and not bleeding, off they go to Kandahar.
The helicopters are such a vital target. They fly really low to the ground, they fly really hard and fast and make a lot of turns in order to avoid, you know, the possibility of being locked on or being shot at. You're trying to treat the patient, the heat inside and the thumping of the blades, and your adrenaline's going, and you've probably sweat out a couple liters of fluid under your body armor, and at the same time, you're like, are we there yet? Are we there yet?
My name is Master Cpl Paul Franklin, and I was injured in 2006 in a suicide bombing. There's 2 weeks left of our tour. As we drive in through the city gates, all of a sudden, Jeff, my co-driver, calls car right, and at that exact moment, I swerve as hard as I can left. He detonates on the axle, and it lifts our vehicle up through the air, tumbling. I pop out, my left leg's ripped off instantly, my right leg's destroyed, hands and face are on fire.
We got back in from our patrol, and we heard a very large explosion. And the building moved to the left. So we knew immediately it was big, it was bad, and it was one of our patrols.
I remember flying through the air, and then just smack, sitting up the side, sitting against the wall, like that. And then I was like, uh-oh. And then I knew, as soon as I looked down, I knew I was in trouble. As a medic, I'm like, man, I'm in deep, 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 deep trouble here. I saw my leg 5 feet away, and I reached for my tourniquet, but it's in my leg that's just 5 feet away, so I can't get at it. As soon as I was injured, I knew I had to come home. And I wanted to make it home for my wife and my son, and I knew that I had to make it. I was even thinking, you know, worst case scenario, I'm in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Rick Hansen went around the world. So, I mean, if he can do that, then I can go shopping in a wheelchair. It's not a big deal.
Did you really think of Rick Hansen in that moment?
I did, yeah.
Paul came in first. He was bleeding significantly and missing a leg. Immediately, he was cared for by the doctor and the physician assistant. And then someone handed me a bag, a black garbage bag. And that was his leg.
Here you're treating somebody who you knew quite well. Is that different? Did that alter things?
Yes, because you think about their family, I think. So whenever I would like to think whenever a medical professional is treating someone, it's always their best. But when it's someone you know, someone you've worked with, you think about their family too. You think, I have to be able to send him home. My husband, Bryce Keller, was with one PPCLI, and Bryce was slated to be on the 7-month deployment that followed mine. I came back the second week of February in 2006, and he flew out 8 days later.
Were those 8 days good?
Oh, yeah. But I came back from being there thinking, why did I ever say that you could go there? You listen to the radio constantly. You check the headlines constantly. You get home and the news goes on the TV and stays on the TV. Military families listen to the news a lot.
I'm in Landstuhl, Germany, in ICU. My wife's there, and it is now 3 days later, and the doc comes up to her and says, we have the leg. And she's like, what do you want me to do with it? And they say some people do a service, some people just throw it in an incinerator. She's just like, just get rid of it. But the funny part is the leg they sent to Landstuhl initially, the reason why it was so late, wasn't my leg. My real leg then came from Kandahar to Dubai and then to Landstuhl. So, you imagine these poor pilots flying around with these legs. That's Franklin's leg. I thought I just flew Franklin's leg. When they were finally doing my final surgery on my right leg, the doctor says, if we cup above the knee, chances of you walking is pretty much slim to none. And he says, what we want to do is not finish that surgery. We're going to wait, and then we'll talk to you about your future, your plans, and all the rest. I said, no. If you see something in there like infection, get rid of it, cut it off. Then they said, well, you realize what the outcome will be. And I said, yes, it's the same outcome, which I knew from the beginning. I'm going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
I'd known Debbie. We met in '01, just before the bombings, World Trade Center. She was with me in Germany because they flew her and my parents over to say goodbye. That's how bad it was. I was in an induced coma for a while, for a couple of weeks, I think. My first memory was bagpipes. I was going to be transferred to Edmonton for rehab, and my regiment came in, gave me an honor guard. My platoon, the platoon I commanded before I went overseas.
My greatest moment was when my son walked in the room and he saw me, and I was battered and beaten, and I was not looking good. And my son said to me, can you still play video games? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, don't worry about it then. And that was, and that for me was like, I just laughed at that, and it was great for me. And I knew I couldn't play soccer or skateboard or ride a bike or whatever, but for whatever reason, he chose to ask that silly question, which just made me smile, and I smile ever since because of that.
What was your prognosis?
Probably death, but if I survived, they said I'd be a vegetable for the rest of my life.
Did you know that?
No.
Did Debbie know that?
Yeah. But Debbie didn't give up on me. Most women would run away. In fact, some of them did, I understand.
I left for work, and I heard while I was driving, they released the name of one of my friends who had died earlier in the day.
Who's that?
Corporal Chris Reed. And I knew it was bad at that moment because that was my husband's driver. So if Chris was dead, what about the people that were with him? They said 4 were injured and 4 were dead.
On the radio?
On the radio. I called my friend Amy, who had deployed with me, and she said, just get to work, just get to work. So I was actually notified of Bryce's death at work.
I can't imagine how bad that was.
I hope that you never have to know. And that's how that piece goes from when you're treating someone that you know. I don't want their family to have to know that either.
I was the National Repatriation Officer for the Canadian Forces from 2008 onward, pretty much towards the end of the mission.
And what would be a one-sentence description of that job?
From the moment of death to internment, and then sometimes after, to ensure everything goes right. I was very proud of what the Canadian Forces did. You know, we heard a lot of things in the news, the Americans, the British, you know, how they bring them in at night. So yeah, I was pretty proud of being part of that process.
We had 2 Canadian medics killed on my rotation, Corporal Mike Starker and Corporal Wilmot. And I escorted Mike's casket all the way back to Calgary. You know, all the fears and, you know, the emotion of, you know, what am I going to say to his wife? What am I going to say when I get home? What am I going to see? Then you've lost your friend and you're trying to grieve through that. You know, I had to go down the Highway of Heroes in the front of the hearse, seeing the 50 bridges with the flags. I think I broke down right then in the car and, you know, cried for the next little bit. Every bridge, I think there's 50 of them between Trenton and Toronto, and every highway, and ambulances and fire trucks, and there's nothing on the 401. The police have it all blocked off.
I would say to those Canadians that came out to the bridges and lined the 401, you'll never know the solace that you brought loved ones to know that the nation, you know, for a parent or for a wife or children, to know people share your grief.
Generally, the protocol is for families to stay with their loved one until Toronto, and then the next day to fly home and to wait at home for the remains to be released, and then to carry on with whatever burial they've decided on. I refused to leave. So I could bring him home myself.
I remember that as we're coming into Calgary, the pilot announced that you may see 2 military people on the flight. And he explained what we were there for, that they had the honor of carrying a fallen Canadian soldier home. And you get to see that plane just went quiet. I think the first time I've been on an airplane where the whole plane was just dead quiet on landing, people didn't know what to do. There's people crying on the plane, and they were clapping when we got up, and again, it was just another whole flood of, you could see the sorrow. It's like every Canadian felt the loss of this Canadian soldier. This pride that people showed that you're not used to.
November the 11th, the day for the fallen. But the rest of the year, think about the wounded that were there when, who are facing huge challenges in this country right now. Huge challenges.
Injured Canadian soldiers are well treated within the Department of National Defense. As that wounded soldiers for 3 years that they cover you, absolutely brilliant. World's best. As soon as they leave the Department of National Defense, suddenly they fall under the purview of Veterans Affairs, and everything falls apart.
The soldiers of World War II, Korea, were treated with security and dignity because of their monthly pension. Unfortunately, post-June 2006, we have two standards of veterans, the haves and the have-nots. We already have homeless veterans.
Veterans Affairs asked me to prove that I have no legs so that I can get nursing benefits and shopping benefits and house cleaning, which is the thing that I use. So within that, I have to prove that I have difficulty doing housekeeping. Now, I have to prove that every single year. I have to prove I have no legs every year. And sure enough, they stepped up into the silly world and said, okay, he doesn't have to prove it every year. He only has to prove it every 3 years. It should simply say, are you permanently disabled, yes or no?
I had bad PTSD episodes in Edmonton.
Memories, flashbacks, what?
Yeah, everything. I couldn't read about anything about Afghanistan or watch on the TV. And I was terrified of uniforms. Of course, my friends all visited me in uniform to make me feel good. But I was just howling at Debbie. I remember screaming at her, foul things at her. She would hide our daughter Grace away in the basement. I remember thinking, this is what it's like to be insane. I could feel it coming on. I was powerless to resist it. At Halloween, I had a bit of a bad go because the fireworks sounded like RPGs and they triggered my PTSD. But I came home and put Noah to bed, my son Noah, to bed, and that calmed me down.
I got out of the hospital the day after spring break ended. And so Simon was walking to school. And I said, I'm gonna walk you to school and maybe do show and tell. And I ended up walking to school. It was very difficult. It was only a half a kilometer walk, but man, oh man, it was a really difficult thing to do. And my son's looking down and he's looking for the cracks and he wants to make sure I don't trip.
I married Debbie in 2010. Yeah. I was not going to be married slumped in a wheelchair. So I practiced standing up for long enough to save my vows. It was like, couples practice for the first dance. Yeah, we practiced for my first stand, and that was our dance. Yeah.
People say, was the Afghan mission worth it? And I would suggest, this is my own thought, I would suggest the only ones that can truly answer that are the loved ones of the fallen.
I have regrets of a personal nature. But that's what my husband and I wanted to do. We wanted to be soldiers, and soldiers deploy. I don't see our time there as wasted.
We brought them back with poise, dignity, involved the families, and in the end, the nation involved itself. Nobody organized this. And I think maybe the Highway Heroes will stand as a lesson for Canadians, and particularly for Canadian politicians as they cheer that there is no good outcome to war.